Welcome to my channel. I'm Elizabeth Liz Machette, and we are the Astrology Star Sisters. And today we're talking about astrology and tarot for Pisces season 2026. I want to welcome Joy Vernon and Madam Simon. It's good to have you both back on today. How are you doing?
Great. Thanks for having us, Liz. Always love getting together with you guys once a month.
Right. Okay, so here we go. Joy Vernon is an astrologer, a tarot reader, and a Reiki master. Her website is joyvernon.com. Madam Simon is an archetypal astrologer, tarot reader, visionary artist, and her website is iconalchemy.com. And I'm an astrologer, author, intuitive, and tarot reader, and my website is alightpath.com. And we are in Pisces season, and art courtesy of Madam Simon, and I'll let her tell you about her art piece.
So this is a photo manipulation. I do a fair amount of voracious photography, really. I photograph lots and lots of things, but primarily I like things from the natural world, flowers and trees and whatnot. I think this was a photo originally taken at the Northwest Flower and Garden Festival, which is due to happen next week again. It's my annual pilgrimage to go and take photos of pretty flowers. And then I altered the color, monkeyed around with it, which I like to do quite a bit. So.
Thank you. Okay, we're in the season of Pisces. Joy, would you like to lead us off?
Yeah, absolutely. So for Pisces, we've got a mutable water sign. And so mutable is going to be Pisces. The mutable signs are the ones that are in between the end of one season and the beginning of a next season. So our cardinal signs are the beginning. Preceding the cardinal are these mutable signs that transition us out of the fullness of the season at the fixed sign, transitioning into the next one through the mutable, and then starting that next season at the cardinal. So the mutable signs are finishing, they are evolving, they mediate from one thing into the next, they adapt from one thing and the next into the next. They're transition points. And so the ruling planets are Jupiter and Neptune. And the water signs express things like fluidity. They can be our emotions or our intuition. They can be the subconscious and dreams. And the mantra typically is going to be something along the lines of I imagine or I believe. Keywords for Pisces: dreamy, intuitive, spiritual, sensitive. It's mystic and compassionate and very imaginative. I think one of the things with Pisces is that Pisces is the ocean. And just like this idea of that drop in an ocean, you can't be a single drop in an ocean. There, like everything is flows together, and I think that expresses a lot of that Piscean energy. Is that there's an urge towards oneness, there's an urge towards connection on a very deep level. And so the cautions end up being confused, nebulous, enmeshed is one of my favorites, and possibly even escapist. And there's that idea, Pisces sun, Pisces moon, Pisces Venus. A lot of times there is a sense of, I don't know where I end and the next person begins, and you tend to adapt really easily into that other person. And then and then you come in for a reading because you're like, why is my relationship the way it is? It's like, I don't have any boundaries. And so trying to have that beautiful experience of oneness, but at the same time kind of get a feeling for who you are at the same time is one of the hardest things for Pisces energy.
Simon, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, that summed it up pretty well.
Whoops, sorry, I didn't mean to go too. So we're going to see the sun's ingress into Pisces, and Joy did our slides, so I'm going to let her talk about what she has here.
Okay, awesome. And I forgot to put a circle around the sun, but it's over there on the left-hand side, just there at 0 degrees of Pisces. And so, and there at 0 Pisces, it is loosely square. It's not even that loose. It's square to Uranus at 27 Taurus over there. And later, eventually, Uranus is finally going to move into Gemini for good. But for right now, that square is about 3 degrees off. We're not done with our stelliums. We had a Capricorn stellium 2 months ago. We had an Aquarius stellium last month. We're moving forward with a Pisces stellium this month. And they haven't been tiny stelliums. They've been great big ones. So this time we've got a triple Pisces. So sun, moon, and ascendant all in Pisces. And Mercury's on the ascendant, and Venus and the moon are just a few degrees earlier. So we really have Venus, the moon, and Mercury all pretty close there to the ascendant, as well as that sun at the beginning. And I forgot to mention the North Node, but it's in there too. We do, by the ingress, we do finally have Saturn moved out, which I think happens we're recording on the 13th. I think it happens today or tomorrow. Then it moves into Aries. But by the actual ingress on the 18th, it will be in Aries. And which is our next thing to say is we've got Saturn and Neptune at 0 degrees Aries leading up to their conjunction, which will be on February 20th. So 2 days after this ingress chart. Meanwhile, Jupiter has hit its station degree at 15 Cancer, and it's ruling the ascendant and midheaven while stationing, and it trines our planets that are flanking the ascendant. In fact, I think the moon is applying pretty tight trine to Jupiter RX there. And they're in, of course, mutual reception because the moon rules Cancer and Jupiter rules Pisces. So that, I mean, we're not crazy about the station point on the one hand. On the other hand, they're both in water signs. They're both reasonably happy where they are, and they are in mutual reception. I did add in here that Lilith is square the nodal axis because Madam Simon will tell us all about that and explain it to me because I don't know anything about Lilith. But I thought that was probably interesting to somebody. She also will know the correct, because the program that I'm using here, Astroseek, does not do the Lilith has like different ways of being calculated. We probably don't want to go into this, but when Astroseek doesn't do the calculation that Simon uses. So I just want to say, when she tells you that it's at the wrong position, that's why. and so Mercury, sorry. Part of me is like, Joy, just leave it alone. And I'm like, but I know she's going to tell me it's wrong. And I'm like, I don't know how to change it. I've got two options and neither one of them are the one she wants. Anyway, so we also have Mercury going retrograde in Pisces coming up on February 25th. And all of us have been feeling it already. So if you at home have been feeling it too, man, I'll tell you, the second it hit that shadow, the day before it hit the shadow, we were already going, what the hell's going on with Mercury? And so here it is, not even retrograde yet. And all I'm hearing from everybody I talk to are all of the things that go wrong with our communication, our computers, our transportation, and all of that. So this is probably going to be a rough one. Keep in mind that in my experience, and it'll be interesting to hear what other people have to say, in my experience, honestly, the shadow periods, particularly as it slows down towards the station degree, those are really much rougher than the retrograde itself. And hitting the station degree, both station retrograde as well as at the end when it stations direct, those will be the worst period of the Mercury retrograde. So kind of keep that in mind. The day that everybody's like, yay, Mercury's direct, bad Mercury day. Don't do any Mercury things then. Give it another week. But other than that, yeah, just track. And that's the thing. That's the thing, is that I would always, track for yourself, because I would always go, oh, wait, why is this going wrong? Why did the credit card machine suddenly go out when I'm trying to buy something at the local metaphysical store? Why did my computer do something weird all of a sudden with no explanation? Because I used to look and say, oh, well, is Mercury retrograde? It's not retrograde. And I finally had to figure out, oh, it's in the shadow. And there's another thing called the storm that I hear some astrologers use. The guy that used to do I think his name was, I'm not going to remember his name, so don't worry about it. But I'm saying that to myself. I think it's Bill something, but I want to say Campion, but I don't think that's right. But anyway,
Maybe Bill Meridian.
No, he wrote the Llewellyn Daily Planetary Guide, and that Paula somebody or other writes it now. Paula with a B. This was Bill with a C. That's about what you're going to get out of my memory these days. And so he talked about the storm of Mercury, and it was when it was moving at had slowed down to a certain degree, like amount of movement per day. I forget what it was, but his assessment of that storm always matched really clearly with how Mercury played out for me. So always watch when things start to go wrong. Take a note of where Mercury is, how fast it's moving. And you can start to find out for yourself what your parameters are for when Mercury is going to affect you the most. So I think that's the longest intro I've done on a first slide.
Well, you did a great job. I want to thank you. And today, Mercury Shadow is working with my grandchildren, because my grandson missed his bus to school and my granddaughter missed her bus going home. So my daughter had to leave work and go pick him up and take him home. So it is working. And, it's not a huge, awful thing that happened. It's just something that needs to be taken care of. So I wanted to clarify that. And I also want to clarify that this chart we're using is for Seattle. It's February 18th at 7:52 a.m. And Simon, what would you like to add? I know we want to know about the Lilith square. So,
okay. So first of all, this is the Black Moon Lilith's mean position. It's actually not too far off from the position that I use, which is the interpolated or natural position. Which is currently at, it's about 5 degrees and I think 41 minutes. Anyway, it's close. You're just about a degree off. So definitely still applicable. It's applying to the square with the nodes. And a little additional tidbit that helps us to understand that T square that Lilith is forming with the nodes is that the asteroid, one of the goddess asteroids, Pallas, so one of the bigger asteroids out there, right, is also applying to a conjunction with the North Node. And so that means Lilith is square Pallas. Okay. So one of the reasons I mention that is because Pallas is named for Pallas Athena, goddess of wisdom. Okay. And she's also a warrior goddess. And so we associate Pallas with strategic thinking and our ability to plan. Now think about that in Pisces. It doesn't mean that we're incapable of planning, and it doesn't mean that we're incapable of strategic thinking. Instead, we are likely to intuit, where to go next. What is it that is going to work in our schedules? We're more fluid and adaptable with our planning when Pallas is in Pisces. Okay. And we may have some of that, there's that uncanny tendency that Pisces can have to, I know what you're thinking, right? Or I know what you're going to do in this case. Okay. And so that may be a useful manifestation of Pallas here. But for those who want things to be very hard and fast and rigid, it's a lot more confusing and difficult. Okay. How we respond to any of these transits depends upon our own natal promise, right? Depends upon how our natal charts are set up, but also, what's our temperament? Okay. What are we inclined to be happy or upset by? Okay. Those of us with strong Pisces placements on one hand may find this to be more familiar ground, but on the other hand may, kind of say, oh, I wish I had some more of the balancing sort of clarity, right? Okay. So Pallas is conjoining or is applying to a conjunction with the North Node. I believe she's within 3 degrees now. Okay. And so that conjunction then can have our ability to think both strategically and intuitively be part of what determines our fate, our destiny, our karmic arc. And it's part of the lessons that we are meant to learn. Okay. So it's not just fate beating up on us, right? It's, these are the things that we need to learn in order to be able to go in the direction we should. Okay. So now here is Lilith squaring all of that. And Lilith is, the demonized feminine. That's one way of looking at her. We can look at her as a kind of intuitive knowing that is perhaps less soft and fluffy than we like to think of intuition, right? Especially in a fire sign like Sagittarius. That's going to be quick and action oriented. Okay. And well, yes, Lilith gets demonized. Lilith is also about who are we at our core? What is our truth? What is our authentic self? And in particular, what is our authentic self that is not going to take silencing lying down? Okay. This is the part of us that, maybe one part of us, say our strategic thinking, knows that the thing that we want to blurt out right in this moment is not particularly conducive to social harmony. The Lilith part of us, though, is like, I'm raring ahead with that. Okay. I am so not interested in keeping my mouth shut about it. And so that's the thing about it. There can be this powerful honesty with Lilith. Okay. And at the same time, it's uncomfortable because she's not likely to say the things that are gonna, make nice with everybody. Okay. Especially since she is that demonized self, that part of us that we may reject, that part of us that society rejects. Okay. And sometimes Lilith stuff isn't, it's not that she's done anything so terrible. It's that other people around her are so uptight, right? But nonetheless, she can stir up a bit of trouble through no fault of her own, I might add, right? Maybe she's got a boundary. I don't like this, this is the case for lots of people with autism, for example. Okay. Through no fault of their own, they're minding their own business, just trying to make it through life. And there's things going on around them that are really, really challenging for them. And other folks are like, why can't you adjust? And this autistic person is like, why am I always the one who has to adjust for you? Right? Okay. So this is what we may see a bit more of with this Lilith squaring the nodes and squaring Pallas. Okay. That our feelings of rejection may get stirred up. Also our feelings of like, why can't I just fit in? Okay. Or why can't so-and-so next to me just fit in? Okay. So the good news about this is that with so much going on in Pisces, the planets are naturally steering us toward a more compassionate way of being, right? Asking that we pay attention to the ways in which we're all interconnected, even when sometimes that connection seems a little wonky. Okay. So I actually feel like Lilith here is maybe useful to us. Again, what did I mention before? That like for those of us with lots of Pisces placements, having so much stuff in Pisces might be like a little bit of overwhelm, right? Or for those of us who have difficulty with Pisces energy in general. Maybe we don't have any Pisces placements and it's like this is foreign territory to us. Okay. So much Pisces might be like, oh my goodness, I don't know how to handle this swimming in the cosmic ocean thing. This, suddenly intuiting what the person next to me is thinking, Lilith, therefore, squaring all that Pisces stuff, but particularly squaring the nodes, is the reminder to pay attention to our authentic sense of self, and in particular, our authentic beliefs and actions, and the willingness to expand, which Pisces also has. Both of these are ruled by Jupiter. Okay. But in this case, to expand and learn and grow in a way that is not just becoming another amoeba in the primordials too.
Thank you for that, Simon. Did you have anything else you wanted to share on this slide?
No, not on this slide.
Joy?
No, that was awesome.
Okay, Joy, take it away.
So here's our cards for the Sun ingress into Pisces. So the ingresses are, of course, are always going to be the first decan of the sign, and the first decan of Pisces is one of my all-time favorite cards, the 8 of Cups, which is Saturn ruling the first decan of that sign. And the decan ruler, Saturn, is going to be the world, and the whoops, I should have changed that to Pisces. The Pisces major arcana card is the moon, which at least I got the cards right. Words optional, cards important.
Mercury retrograde shadow at work. So the audience knows it's like we're all vulnerable to that, and it's like we're all humans, so it's no big deal. Go ahead.
I missed it too. I was reviewing them and I still missed it. So
well, that's reassuring at least. So yeah, and so and I think I just love the 8 of Cups. I started working on decanic blog posts back in 2012. And one of my favorite ones that I wrote back then was a meditation that I did on the Eight of Cups. And it's such a powerful card for me. It is about retreating. It's about going, because to me in this card, the character is walking towards like this shadowy place or this darkness. And so this idea of kind of like, I want to retreat, I want to get out of here, I want to go somewhere where I can be alone. And with the land and the sea and those rocks, and it reminds me of well, I didn't know the place at the time, but I could feel the energy of it. And then after watching Poldark, which if you haven't seen Poldark on Netflix, it's like, oh my God, that show is so good. But it takes place in Cornwall, and there's tons of footage of the ocean crashing against rocks just off the coast of Cornwall. And that is what those rocks there remind me of. And these are rocks that the waves have worn down over millennia. And just the idea of something that's still standing, a rock, Saturn, in the midst of this constant movement of the ocean, Pisces, just such a beautiful expression of the astrology of the card, and just that idea of retreating so that we can find within us our own thing that will stand firm against the ravages of the emotions or of time or of just the ebb and flow of the world. So one of my all-time favorite cards.
And then Simon, will you share the Thoth card with us?
Yeah, so the Thoth version of this card is actually what I have been using for the past couple of years to explain Saturn in Pisces to people. So it's kind of amusing, that we're talking about this now as Saturn is finally leaving Pisces. So in the Thoth version of this card, we see what looks to be a fountain made of these golden cups, but the fountain's not working anymore, right? There's this kind of like dribble coming out of like a couple of the cups, but it's like there's this sense of depletion here. We've got that vast ocean behind these cups, right? Huge amounts of water. And yet difficulty on some level accessing that. And the reason for that is that, there comes this moment when we've experienced so much challenging feeling, so much of the grinding kind of feeling, the long-term wear of Saturn, that our ability to care becomes kind of depleted. Okay. There's a certain cuss-laden expression about that, which I will not repeat, but and so, one of the things that can happen when we've got Saturn going through Pisces is that it feels like endless hardship, and specifically endless emotional hardship. And in the process, we find ourselves then, considering how much more emotion can I actually muster? Okay. Our compassion gets worn down, may feel like it's depleted. And yet, because Saturn does govern what is both, has a sense of the eternal, what lasts, right? We find, wait, there's that faint trickle. there's still that little bit left. Okay. This card can really show where it feels like endless doom and gloom. Okay. This can be a very depressive card for people. Okay. If you're already prone to depression, then Saturn entering this place of emotion just is like, oh my goodness, kick me while I'm down, why don't you? Right? And so I very much like to use this card to remind people that things can seem endless, and yet what does Saturn govern? Saturn governs time. And time will progress. We do not stop time. And that means that this too shall pass. This too shall end, even though it seems endless. And in the process, what I've been reminding a lot of people of while Saturn's been doing his trek through Pisces is what else is Saturn associated with? Maturity. And so this becomes about emotional maturity. Yes, sometimes we have to, like the figure in the Rider-Waite version, we have to turn away from the world and go a little internal and take a break from the things that are, triggering the heck out of us, or, causing us to, our depressive tendencies to be worse, or making us feel despairing. Okay. But then we come back, right? We keep coming back. We learn to persist, to exercise that Saturnian ability to pick ourselves up and get back going. Even if all we currently can access emotionally is maybe that thin little trickle, that ocean is still out there, still there for us to access, okay, when we're ready for it. And sometimes Saturn brings us stuff when we very much do not feel ready, okay? But Saturn also reminds us you can do the things that you need to. You are built of sterner stuff than you thought you were, right? So this card is, I do very much feel like this card is emotional exhaustion. That's the way that I can summarize it. And at the same time, it has that hint, that reminder that we are capable of enduring. We are capable of finding that little trickle of compassion, that little trickle of the larger ocean. And that, remember, Saturn is also about limitations, and sometimes we need to put up some boundaries and allow ourselves to proceed with limited feeling despite being able to tap into that larger ocean so that we can get stuff done.
Thank you. What's the word on that card? I can't make it out.
Indolence.
Okay.
Again, it feeds into that notion of like exhaustion and maybe what looks like laziness, but may not be laziness. It's simple burnout.
Thank you. Joy, do you want to share about the moon card?
Yeah. Like, I don't think I have anything fresh to say about it. Nothing's moving me, but I'll start moving my lips and see what happens. I know something interesting to say. I mean, first of all, the moon card is the moon is the luminary at night. It lights up the darkness. The path represents like this coming out of the seas or out of the ocean. So it has this kind of evolutionary quality of evolving through, and then the path leads us up and down the hills, et cetera, through that path of life and that path of our self evolution. When you look at a Tarot de Marseille card, and this is really interesting, this is one of the cards in the cards in the in both the Rider-Waite-Smith and the Thoth, they're not always the same. This is not always true of the same cards, but it's one of the cards that has the Yudes on it, which are those little yellow squiggles that look like maybe raindrops or something. And the Yud is a Hebrew letter that is kind of a life force thing. It's a seed. It means a hand, and particularly like a pointing a finger or pointing at something, and so it's kind of that tip of the finger type of energy. And but what's really interesting in the Tarot de Marseille cards, because here it just looks like dew falling from the moon, and the moon is associated with dew, and that all is fairly logical. In the Tarot de Marseille card, the Yudes are all moving up towards the moon. And that's really cool to think about, because we do think of the moon as refreshing. It is that retreat that we see in the Eight of Cups. It is sleep that fills us up and restores us. And so the idea of this descending, it's kind of, those Yudes are kind of that Reiki energy, that those little sparks of life force that fill us up and restore us. But this idea that in some decks, they're actually moving upwards towards the moon, and the moon is collecting that dew or that restorative quality, that maybe restful or sleep quality, is really, really interesting to me. And I don't know that I have like a powerful interpretation, but it's something I like to think about once in a while.
Thank you. That was great. Simon, you want to share about the Thoth moon card?
So a few things. The Tetragrammaton, which is effectively the set of 4 Hebrew letters that are code for the ineffable name of God, are Yod He Vav He. Okay, and that Yod is each of those represents represents an element. The Yod is primal fire. He is the breath of life. Val is water. And then the final He is earth. Okay? And so that makes for an interesting combination here then, to have all of those little Yods on a water-oriented card, Pisces. And as Joy was talking about, there is that seed energy there that then suggests what comes after Pisces. That's that Aries season. And so the seeds of primal fire are planted here in this watery space and will become that Aries energy that begins the cycle anew. So I find that one very interesting. We also have note that in the Thoth deck, there's more of an Egyptian flavor, obviously. But what do we have? We have canines. Okay. And the canines, whether they are dogs in the Rider-Waite is what it looks like, or jackals in the Thoth. In the Thoth deck, they are meant to represent, they're emissaries of Anubis, right? But we also have associations with dogs and the moon and Hecate. Okay. And so there is, it would be like, a Greek goddess of the crossroads. and it's a deity of witches. Okay, so there is this witchy transitional energy when we look at the moon card. We are at a crossroads trying to decide, do I go between those kind of, those looming towers with these big statues and the black jackals at their feet ready to, savage me if I go through, if I'm not prepared. Okay, there's that breath before we're actually going to move forward. Okay, and we don't know what's on the other side. Things are watery and witchy and confusing. Okay, and so this is a time when we might wish to be careful about what kind of advice we take. For example, somebody may mean well, but really have no clue what's going on. you know, and if we aren't exercising those good Saturnian boundaries, then we may be taking advice that would be good for somebody else, but doesn't actually work for us because we haven't distinguished between ourselves and somebody else, right? The final thing I'd like to leave us with here is that we see at the bottom of the top card of the moon, we have the lowly dung beetle, Kepera, who pushes the disk of the sun up over the horizon. In this card, he's below the horizon, okay? It's the moon's time, it's night time, the sun is not yet ready to rise. But that lowly little dung beetle, is going to be pushing that sun. I find it so amusing. It's like a dung beetle. The dung beetles push around little balls of poop. And here, within this Egyptian mythological symbolism, that dung beetle is also pushing the sun. So, poop or the sun, okay? Which kind of suggests to us, among other things, that, what it is that we're composting, what it is that we are needing to transition away from, what we are excreting, what we are getting rid of, still can form the fuel for the new day. Okay. And I think that's an important thing for us to remember, because one of the feelings that can be very much associated with Pisces is nostalgia and its compatriot, grief. Okay, it's the end of the zodiac cycle. And we are definitely in like this, like I said, we're at this crossroads moment. There can be grief for what we're going to need to leave behind. And so that dung beetle is the reminder that, even when it looks like we're left with is a ball of poop, what we are capable of doing is starting a new day. Right? The seeds of fire are from those yods are within this watery, and here in the northern hemisphere, kind of gloomy, wintry time. And yet the sun, the renewal, is coming. Of course, for those of us who I'm of the night sect, I'm born at night, and so the moon is actually my light of sect. And so for those of us who are of a more nocturnal bent, that sunrise might be something we're not necessarily looking forward to. But this is a time when we can kind of percolate in that pre-dawn light, what I call blue o'clock. Okay. And remember that Pisces is associated with imagination. So this is the time for us to imagine what might come with the dawn and use our imaginations actively rather than like stewing in fear and doom scrolling and all that other kind of stuff, to instead imagine what is the world we wish to see at the dawn. What is the world that we wish to contribute to and create with the new light?
Thank you. So well said. Do you want to add anything, Joy?
I'll add two really quick things. I believe, and you can double check me, Simon. I believe that when those dung beetles are rolling up that dung, they're laying eggs in it too,
Yeah.
right? So
Yep.
our seeds are above, descending from the moon, but also being planted there in the sun that the scarab is carrying. And the other thing is just a fun thing I remembered after I was done. I was like, I think I want to share it because Simon mentioned the canines, and in the Rider-Waite-Smith card, it's usually considered a dog and a wolf. And there's an expression in, I think in French, entre le loup et le chien, and between the wolf and the dog, and it's a reference to twilight. And you ended with another French expression, l'air bleu, which is that twilight just before. Did you ever see that movie, L'air bleu, which is about this? Oh, you would love it, I bet. It's this French movie that's just very quiet and very has a lot of kind of environmental effects and very kind of I don't know if experiential is a word, but just like it's about that time period. There's this idea that the night sounds stop before the day sounds start, and that's called l'air bleu. Is the blue hour is when there is silence and the night sounds have ended and the day sounds haven't started yet. And so just like this really interesting little moment of nothingness, and this twilight idea might be related to that. So yeah, interesting.
I like it. So now we're going to look at the Pisces stellium. Go ahead, Joy.
Yeah, and so here's our triple Pisces with Sun, Moon. So anybody born during this on this day is basically at this time. We've got that triple Pisces energy, Sun, Moon, and Ascendant. It's like all of the primary qualities of the chart are Pisces energy. And we do have Mercury right on the ascendant, partile to the ascendant. Venus is at 10 degrees, the moon's at 14, the ascendant's at 18. So they're kind of spaced out pretty evenly through there. And that moon plus Venus and Mercury are moon closest is trine to Jupiter RX at 15 Cancer, which we kind of mentioned earlier in the mutual reception there. I think in terms of what to expect from the stellium, the fact, and again, this is taken I calculated it for Seattle location and Seattle time zone. And so, how that ascendant will change when you relocate it to other places, I'm not quite sure. But for this chart, it is looking like that Pisces ascendant and just all of those things that we've been talking about with Pisces, the sun's ingress into Pisces, and the moon card, and our eight of cups. All of these things are just so intensely expressed here. Or maybe intense isn't a good word, because we need dreamily expressed here, intuitively expressed here. Our communication And a lot of times when I talk to people about intuition, like what's your intuitive style, because that varies, and Simon even said something about that, but that definitely varies person to person. Mercury a lot of times will address part of our intuitive style, and the moon definitely addresses part of our intuitive style. And so both of those here in Pisces, which tends to be very deep, very dreamy, there is like, to me, I think Scorpio maybe has a real sharp type of psychic ability where you get a real strong psychic hit, and Cancer is more of a compassionate connection with others. But Pisces is this very intuitive, as in I've got Grand Trine and water, so I know I've got all those three of those things activated in my chart. Pisces is much more about, let me think about this, let me dwell on this, let me meditate on this, and I have to kind of float in it for a while and feel it on a really deep level and a very connected, like spiritually connected place. But as I did with my anytime I'm writing something, if I'm not just trying to get information across and go, point 1, point 2, point 3, but if I'm trying to like really understand something deeply and I allow myself to really use my Mercury and Pisces to meditate on it, to imagine different ways it could manifest, to just sit with it in silence. I think Mercury and Pisces, for one thing, but Pisces energy generally can have a sense of silence around it. Just our l'air bleu, kind of blue hour of just that time when everything goes blank. That's what we're really trying to achieve here in Pisces, and particularly with that Mercury right on the ascendant, something that's going to be very intuitive, very dreamy, emotion. A lot of times water Mercury will be a communication style that is emotional. It takes emotions to spur the communication until you really get until you really learn how to work with that better. And it's a hard one to learn, that one. So yeah, like this emotional communication, this very intuitive, poetic, imaginative, stream of consciousness types of communication, again connected with the moon, so there is a dreaminess, all of that. Venus can bring in a deep amount of connection and compassion. So, and then with the trine over to Jupiter, wisdom and leadership and teaching, but also that priest energy in that sign of that very compassionate, understanding, nurturing Cancer. It really is a very, I think there's a lot of really nice energy to this chart. Energy that's good for meditating, for spiritual practices, for imagination or writing, maybe art and some things like that. What do you think?
You care about the Pisces stellium?
So, having a couple of Pisces placements myself, Pisces can sometimes be, associated with creativity because of its imaginative quality. And yet, what I find is that it is often, it's not so much the creative action itself. I feel like that comes in Aries. Pisces is, for me at least, it's floating in formlessness. Okay. It is that space where all things are interconnected. All of the possibilities are there, but you have to sit with the formlessness for a while. You have to sit with the, the amorphous, the where am I looking through this fog and seeing what is that shape there? What is that shape? And in the process of trying to figure out what that is, that's what's going to lead us into the creative thing that becomes associated with Pisces. But in reality, it's like there was all this amorphous stuff before we ever got there. And we have to be able to spend some time in the uncertainty, in order to be able to properly exercise our imaginations. Think about that for a moment. That, imagination doesn't come because oh, I got this fully formed creative idea. Okay. It comes out of these uncertainties and possibilities that then get defined once we emerge from the primordial stew. But meanwhile, we're swimming around in that stew for a while. And I do very much like what Joy said about, this kind of need for some silence, some, the meditational quality that Pisces can facilitate. Especially in a society that it gives us constant stimulation, values constant stimulation. Okay. Pisces becomes something of an antidote to that constant stimulation. Now, it doesn't mean that there is no stimulation in Pisces, that there are, if we look at the symbol of Pisces as a fish, there are, the deep ocean swimming fish, and then there are the, more kind of chatty and sociable fish who are hanging out in in your local pond or your small stream, right? A bunch of koi fish I would not see as entirely quiet, for example. Pisces can be sociable, okay? But I do feel like that is the result of having already processed some of that silence and that formlessness, that vastness of Pisces. Pisces isn't, it is we can look at the ocean as a symbol of it, but it's not simply the terrestrial ocean. It's the ocean of the universe. Okay. Aquarius is associated with galactic consciousness, but Pisces is universal consciousness. It's the whole shebang, which is a lot. And so I kind of feel like one of the best ways for us to make use of this amount of Pisces energy is to acknowledge that things are a lot right now. To hold space for, there are things that are so big that I don't know how to process them logically. Now is a time when I can let myself feel into that, not just on great emotional displays kind of feelings, right? The wholeness of feeling. There are quiet feelings, there are noisy feelings, there are big feelings, there are all the little feelings in between the big feelings. And so this Pisces offers us a time to sit with the full spectrum of feeling, and to recognize how it is all interconnected, um, and to perhaps, yeah, to carve out a little bit more space and time wherever we can to let ourselves sit with those feelings. And the thing about, the stars impel that do not compel. If you really want to be avoidant of your feelings, you can probably manage to do it, but it's gonna take a lot more effort to avoid them than you might want to engage in. There are much better things to put your efforts to. So, so yeah, I feel like this Pisces season, having this big old Pisces stellium, and don't forget that right before this, the day before this ingress, we got a solar eclipse. Okay. You can see right here, this is still like a new crescent moon. Okay. So we may be, yeah, eclipses tend to do a number on the body. Um, so we may be feeling a little depleted of, our more logical, conscious, energetic kinds of states of being. And now this ingress and this Pisces season is now this time to process things on that unconscious, hidden, intuitive, introspective level after having just been hit with this big old change energy from that solar eclipse and some more big old change energy in a couple of days, which we're, I believe, about to talk about.
Thank you. Do you want to add anything, Joy?
No, I think we've floated here long enough.
I'll let you go over the cards and we'll go on.
And so here's our stellium. We've got the Sun, which is the Sun card, Venus, which is the Empress, the Moon, the High Priestess, and then Mercury there, the Magician, which is on the Ascendant. And I always use the Ace of Wands for the Ascendant, but I didn't include it here. And then our Moon card for Pisces. And so I don't know, when we look at this, I think the idea, I don't know, we've got cards 1, 2, and 3, plus the Sun and the Moon. And to me, there's something that maybe with 1, 2, and 3 that it is just a start. I mean, obviously, we're leading up to this really big Saturn-Neptune conjunction at the Aries point at the beginning of the zodiac, which is very soon what we'll be talking about. But there is kind of a freshness to this energy, and both Sun and Moon being incorporated here gives us the daytime perspective, the nighttime perspective, encompasses both lights, I think sometimes we get that sense of the sun bringing truth. Its light brings truth, whereas the moon can conceal. But at the same time, we get the light, the truth light in that sign of quietness and darkness and secrets, and not secrets like Scorpio secrets, but more like mystical secrets. And it's almost like it illuminates really deep spiritual truths. And I think with the Magician, High Priestess, and Empress, it doesn't just illuminate, the sun doesn't just illuminate the mystical truths, but I think that it is really in that Aries energy, putting them to work. I think that Magician, High Priestess, Empress is like, the Magician is like, got it. High Priestess is like, integrating it, and the Empress is like ready to bring it out into the world.
Simon?
Right. Empress is generative capacity that has been seeded by, both the sun's light and the spark of Mercury, right? And within the top deck, the priestess is this combination of yin and yang. She is that bridge between that initial spark that that the magician is like, playing around with. Oh, I got this power. What am I going to do with it? And then the priestess bridges that into the generative capacity of the Empress. I think it's interesting, Joy, talking about the sun as truth and then the moon as, reflection. Okay. So we can certainly, say that, the moon may in that capacity not be the real truth. It's a pale reflection of the truth. But in fact, unless you are like somebody who's got like a, Mercury and Gemini, really quick mental processing capability, for a lot of us, in order to be able to comprehend the truth, we need to spend time in reflection on the truth. Okay. We need to be able to look at the truth through multiple forms of light and darkness. We need to sit with the truth, embody the truth. And the moon, of course, relates to the body and the body's seasons and cycles, the ebb and flow of time and feeling. And so, this combination of sun and moon, I would argue that the sun's truth cannot be fully comprehended unless we have the moon's processes, its reflection. So I do very much feel like this stellium gives us that capacity to be able to comprehend those deeper truths, those spiritual truths, as Joy was talking about, on a level that we can't grasp if we're just in that very immediate young consciousness. And again, with that Saturn Neptune in Aries, that conjunction coming up, with Saturn in Aries in particular, but also with Neptune, like there's this, both of them moving into this fire sign, and we experienced like a little prelude of that this past summer. But that combination now seems like there may be things coming at us quickly in ways that would be harder to process if we hadn't had this groundwork being set in terms of our reflection on truth, our experiencing of this seeding energy with this deep yin quality that incubates that light, that truth, that potential action, that generative power. Okay. What, as Saturn and Neptune both dissolve and rebuild reality when they are together, and they've been doing that in Pisces on an emotional and intuitive level for a while. And so I kind of feel like this Pisces ingress is actually that completion of their long process right before they're about to conjoin in Aries. So this, even though it's the beginning of Pisces, that we're having this, ingress in, this stellium in, we're also engaging with that big Pisces end of zodiac, Pisces end of a cycle, big ending and big beginning energy, both combined. And so that requires that we spend some internal time before we can do the external work.
Well said. It's like a very active time the last 10 days of February, because we have the solar eclipse on the 17th and the ingress on the 18th and the conjunction of Saturn and Neptune on the 20th and then Mercury retrograde on the 25th. So super active this last part of the month. So now we get to the Saturn and Neptune in Aries conjoining. So who wants to start?
Well, I guess I will. And this is something we've all been looking forward to for a really long time. And I just did a talk on it for ISAR, the International Society of Astrological Research. And so if you're a member, you can go find that talk over on their website in their archives section. So I'm not sure. I just talked for like an hour and a half on it last week, and so in the beginning of this week. So I'm like, where to start, how to say it concisely. So what we've got going on here is we've got Saturn and Neptune, of course, coming out of the gestation of Pisces and being born into the action of Aries. And so that is right there. It is at the 0 point of the zodiac. And at the same time, it is, of course, as we've discussed ad nauseum, I believe my co-podcasters might think, it is in that bisextile to the other outer planets. And so we've got, I marked them there, Pluto at 4 degrees of Aquarius, and our Uranus, which is square to our sun ingress right now at 27 Taurus. And so I think it's probably worthwhile talking momentarily about the Aries point, so that we can understand this better. Of course, it is the 1st degree of the zodiac. So it is the, I described it to a client today as the place of the astrological new year, if it's not the time of the astrological new year. And so it is the place where that we start the zodiac. So the idea of fresh starts, the idea of that birth out of the gestation of Pisces into the action of Aries, any kind of brand new beginning energy is all really important. Something that came to mind for me these past few weeks, in tarot, every time people get, for me, this is one of my pet peeves. So the death card for me is about endings. And I know that every tarot reader on the planet besides me is like, it's about transformation. It is about new beginnings. And I'm like, no, the death card is about endings, because that's where things end. And if you want to call the death card new beginnings, then guess what? All the new beginning cards you have to call death, because it's only fair. And so this new argument, it's like, okay, all of your aces are now endings. All of your pages are now about ending something. I'm like, if you're going to use the death card for new beginnings, you have to use your new beginning cards. The Fool card is now about endings. And it's true, because death is an ending that will lead to a new beginning. And the new beginnings always come after something has ended. They are tied in together, but the death card is, let's stop and talk about the ending. And then the aces, your pages, your Fool card, whatever else is representing new beginnings, to you, it's like, now we can talk about what comes next. Let the night noises, I'm glad I thought of that movie because I'm loving this metaphor. Let the night noises come to an end. Take that moment of emptiness of the breath, and then let the new things happen. And this is literally what we've been trying to do as these planets move out of that end of Pisces and move into Aries, is we've been trying to find what is ending and what is concluding, and what is that breath, that held breath, the hold in between the exhalation and the new inhalation. And now, as of February 20th, we're really into, they're both into, by February 18th, they're both into Aries. February 20th is an actual conjunction. That is that in-breath. Now we get to take a breath and we get to start something. And the fact that Saturn and Pluto and Uranus are in there, the fact that this is called a world point, meaning that in a mundane astrology, the Aries ingress, which will be when the sun moves into Aries, so that'll be next month, but that Aries ingress, that chart for that time of the sun into first degree of Aries, that represents the entire upcoming year. The other seasonal ingresses only represent the 3 months ahead, but the Aries ingress represents the whole year. So that's always an important chart to look at. But these are on that point. They are on the place of that important time of the year. And so talking about those three outer planets, which that have a greater sense of generational impact, a greater sense of worldwide impact, a slower evolution to them, a slower development of something. Those are all things that are very important to consider with this transit, and that they're all working together in that bisextile. I think some of the other things, like I said, I could talk about this easily for an hour and a half. I probably could have kept going if they would have let me. I had to really rein myself in. But because there's a lot here. And I think some of the main things, let me think about. Oh, I know. One thing, the Saturn, we always think of these conjunctions. Let me step back for a second. We always think of these conjunctions as a beginning of a cycle. And then the two planets involved give us the quality of that cycle. And so whenever the sun and moon come together, that's a new moon, and that happens once a month. Saturn and Neptune come together, that's going to be a new moon energy for those two planets. That happens once every 36 years. The last time they conjoined was in Capricorn, and that's when the fall of the Berlin Wall. And so Saturn is walls, for one thing. Saturn is boundaries, it's separation. And Neptune is that oneness that we were talking about, that immersion that we see in that oceanic quality. So a separation was destroyed, and so that oneness and immersion could return. Now, the last time that Saturn and Neptune were conjoined in Aries was 1703. And one of the things that's interesting to me about that is that happened, 1703 happened the Saturn and Neptune conjoined then at the beginning of the 18th century. And so this is like after the scientific revolution. It's prior to our American Revolution, our French Revolution, and everybody else that revolted all around that time. And so and Aries to me is about identity. I think one of the Saturn Neptune things in Aries particularly is that exploration of the limits of Saturn of identity and the lack of limits, or the immersion into identity, and exploring these contrary factors. So we came out of the scientific revolution. We came into Saturn, Neptune, and Aries. We had to figure out who are we at that time. By the end of that century, we are people that revolt. We are people that want independence, which again is an Aries thing. We want the people to rule, and not the 1%, the royalty. And so just after the during the years of the American Revolution, but not the start, but during the years of the American Revolution and going into the French Revolution, Pluto moved into Aquarius. That was an entire century for people to ascertain their identity and then use that Aquarian energy to create the utopia that they wanted. There were actually 2 other Saturn Neptune conjunctions during that time, prior to Pluto moving into Aquarius. We're having that 18th century energy of the identity through the revolution, all at the same time. We have the Saturn, Neptune in Aries and Pluto in Aquarius at the same time. The identity and that Aquarian ideal, that Aquarian utopia, are trying to happen simultaneously. We don't have any time to work it out. So how is that going to, I'm not making any predictions. I'm just saying what the qualities are. But to me, that's a huge amount of pressure going on. If we take that back, and again, the previous Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Aries was at 555 AD, and that was in the beginning of Aries. It was about 5 or 6 degrees, I think, of Aries. So it was in that first decan. That was the time of where an emperor named Justinian I was the ruler of the Byzantine Empire, and his goal was to expand his territory. And I don't understand. This is why I hate talking about my talk for the astrological organization was all about mystical things and heist movies. We talked about heist movies. We talked about some history things, but history that was made into other movies. So I'm like, talk about kingdoms and stuff. I get so confused. But if I understood correctly, I think this Byzantine Empire came after the fall of the Roman Empire, but they were trying to rebuild the empire, the Roman Empire. Anyway, he was trying to re-establish the same territory as the Roman Empire had. And so there is this, and Aries has, with this fresh start energy, with this Mars warrior energy, definitely, in fact, the 2 of Wands, which is the first decan of Aries, shows a man on a castle parapet looking out over his kingdom, holding a globe in his hand, thinking, how can I expand my territory? That was literally what was happening 2 times ago when Saturn and Neptune were conjoined in Aries and joined in the early degrees. The one in 1703 was around 11 degrees of Aries, but the one in 555 was there in that first decan. And So these are all the energies that are going on around us. This coming out of, I think one other thing that I'll say, and I know I'm probably talking too much for a podcast, but I have a lot to say about this. One other thing that I will say is that I had done a talk years ago when Saturn moved into Pisces. I did a talk on Saturn and Neptune in Pisces. One of the stories, I always like to express these qualities not through the historical stuff. I know you're supposed to, and I'm just like, I will look it up and I will try to say something intelligent, but please just let me talk about some imaginative something. One of the stories that was written around the time when Saturn and Neptune were joined in Pisces was The Fisher King by Chrétien de Troyes. And he is very Piscean, this old man that's wounded and the land has gone barren, and he just spends his time escaping out into a boat, fishing in the ocean. And so there's this young knight who leaves his mother, and his mother is, he's a little bit tied to her apron strings, and she's like, don't do this and don't do this, and giving him all these rules. And one of the things she says is, be polite. If you get invited into anybody's home, don't ask them any questions. That is rude. And so he wanders into this castle and is received by the Fisher King, and there's this great big feast. Well, there's this whole part of the story, whereas if somebody will ask the right question of the Fisher King, he will be healed. And so the Fisher King's like, hey, do you have any questions for me? And the knight's like, no, I don't have anything. I want to be polite. Thank you so much for your hospitality, sir. I have no questions for you. And so this opportunity for this king to be healed is lost because the knight had not individuated from his mother, which is an Aries thing. Well, Chrétien de Troyes did not finish that story. And between that Saturn-Neptune conjunction in Pisces and when they next conjoined, which was in Gemini, but after they had moved out of Pisces and into Aries, 3 other authors tried to finish it. And all 3 of them took the weirdest turns toward violent expression. It's like, he just needs to be a knight and he needs to kill everybody and he needs to do, blah, blah, blah. And he needs to go and fight a war and all of this kind of stuff. And it's kind of like, whoa, did you even read the first part of the story that you're trying to finish? And so this other story that I talked about is the 47 Ronin, which is a true story. And you might have seen there was a movie with Keanu Reeves, which really destroyed the original story. And I actually haven't watched it, but I read about it and it's like, okay, that sounds like a disaster. And there had been a Japanese film of it, but it was too close to World War II and it just wasn't good timing. And but it is a really popular story that's been told over and over again. And that's one of the things that I found for the Saturn-Neptune conjunction is it can represent things that repeatedly surface into public awareness and public consciousness. Stories that might have down times, but they keep coming back over and over into consciousness. And so going out of memory and coming into awareness, such a Piscean into Arian thing. And in the 47 Ronin, I think they responded because I've been like, how is the Fisher King supposed to end? And I think that it gives an option because the Ronin are masterless samurai. They had had a master who, complicated story anyway, was now dead. They needed to revenge him to restore his honor And because when he was convicted of something and sentenced to death, and his lands were seized by the government, his money was seized by the government, and as a result, all his samurai were then left masterless due to the government saying, no, you can't have any of this land or anything, as well as the execution, or it was actually seppuku, but I don't want to go into all this, of the master. It was required. It was prescribed, but ordered by the government. And so they had to plan this revenge. They didn't follow the laws of the land, but they followed the spiritual code. And I think that is something really important. A lot of people are kind of like, oh no, like this is all violence and stuff. But this idea of taking your spiritual code from Pisces and using it to take action. And no, you're not a Ronin. No, you're not any kind of samurai. You're not going to be going around beheading people and things like that, or committing seppuku yourself. But to take that spiritual code and move it into your world of action. And I think that's where our Fisher King story gets lost in terms of how the young knight will proceed. He needs to take what he learned from the spiritual portion of this whole elaborate experience. It was almost like a hallucination, of course, in the Piscean castle. And he needs to bring that spiritual thing into his actions in the future, instead of just going, okay, Pisces is done. Now I am Aries and I am going to become a warrior and grow up. That's not quite how it works. Let's be watercolor about this and let those colors blend, instead of saying end of Pisces, stop, new beginning, Aries, let's move forward. Let's have some blend there and try to think about how we can pull our spiritual, our compassion, all of our Pisces keywords. How can we allow those to color our experiences as we move in to this brand new cycle in Aries? So I think that's most of what I wanted to say. So I'll hand it off. I have lots more I want to say. I'm going to stop myself.
Thank you for sharing all that. I find it very interesting. And Simon, go ahead.
Well, let's see. You've given me lots of fodder, but so some things. You mentioned the death card, and that it's about endings, not simply new beginnings. But there's something that you mentioned that's in the in-between space. Okay, that liminal space that we've been dealing with in a lot of this discussion. Okay. Something that I often say to people is that, first of all, to me, the death card is about transformation. And that transformation is in that liminal space. The endings, yeah, I absolutely see your point with regard to ending, but I'm more focused on that Plutonian process, which is associated with the death card. And I often say to people, people love to talk about the caterpillar turning into the butterfly. They almost never talk about the caterpillar in the cocoon being melted down into goo before it becomes the butterfly. Yeah. And I think very much with this Piscean space, with this huge amount of Piscean space, remember I've been talking about primordial stew, right? That space where we are a bunch of undifferentiated cells, where we have not yet gotten into a formative space, where we are in formlessness. And being a caterpillar melted down into goo has to be a pretty disconcerting process. It is confusing, perhaps hallucinatory. Okay. So if you're confused right now, you're right where you're supposed to be. Right? So that Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees Aries, as Joy mentioned, Saturn and Neptune meet once about every 36 years. They have met before in Aries, but every astrologer who I've heard discuss the actual prior meetings of Saturn Neptune has indicated that you have to go back thousands and thousands of years before you're going to get to a Saturn Neptune conjunction at 0 degrees of Aries. So this is unprecedented stuff. Okay. This is not just, okay, this is, once every 36 years and, we can go back to that and have some indication of what will happen. Okay. We can certainly look at those prior examples and say, okay, those give us some inkling. Okay. But this is unusual. I will say that. And for it to be within the context of this minor grand trine or bisextile, okay, with all of the outer planets at once, and I've talked extensively about that here on this show before, that is also highly unusual, okay? I think that Joy, when you bring up the death card, and I talk about the transformative element of that, the Plutonian transformation, I'm tying that very much into this minor grand trine, this bisextile, okay? And also with that Uranus that's getting ready to head into Gemini, because yes, we can certainly look at how this may impact everybody on the planet, but in particular, all three of us are here in the United States. And the United States, I see Imam Coeli, the nadir of the chart, the root of the US chart, is at 1 degrees of Aries. So this conjunction is happening within 1 degree of the US IC, Imam Coeli. Okay. The root of the country, its foundation. Okay. And this minor grand trine, we're going to be headed into oh goodness, this summer we're going to end up with effectively a cradle configuration that will include that minor grand trine and Jupiter once Jupiter has moved into Leo. Okay. And so we're going to get all of those outer planets plus that bigness of Jupiter, okay, building off of whatever energy is seated with this conjunction. On top of that, the United States, you mentioned like that whole revolutionary fervor, okay, that, was effectively seeded with, we get that Saturn, Neptune conjunction at the beginning of the 18th century. And then by the time of both the American and French Revolution, we have Pluto having moved into Aquarius, right? And now we're getting that combination of those energies. Well, we're also going to get, right around the time of It's the 3rd of July on the East Coast and the 4th of July on the West Coast, or maybe I've got that reversed. I don't remember. Anyway, yeah, I do have that reversed. It's 4th of July on the East Coast. We will have the U.S. Uranus and Mars returns conjoining each other. So this is like massive impetus toward change, and at the same time, something of a return to our roots. Okay? For the United States, and of course, then for the reverberations of what happens in the United States out into the rest of the world. Now, we can certainly look at it as like, that's a lot of big stuff, right? And that makes it, we can get frightful, fearful about it. Okay. A lovely friend of mine, who you can find on YouTube as Dr. O. Dr. O has said that when you look at certain feelings, especially the more challenging feelings, it can help to look at them from the standpoint of what are the things that feel kind of like them, but are perhaps a more useful iteration of them, right? And so when we look at fear, that feeling, a more useful iteration of that is excitement. And so I want us to consider, we've got all 3 of the outer planets are moving into active yang signs. Action, and thought as well, since we've got air signs involved. Okay. And so I'm looking at this combination as this is a time for us to take all of that, like Joy was talking about, that spiritual energy that has been being worked on, nurtured, incubated during both this Pisces season that we're ingressing into, but also the whole sojourn of Saturn and Neptune through Pisces. Okay. And now we get to make use of it actively in a way that is in accordance with our minds and our imagination and our ability to communicate and be sociable with each other in these yang signs. And there is speed, there is this quickness, okay, with those signs and with these outer planets all interacting from those yang signs. So right now, yeah, things may be like, we're kind of like floating along in this dreamy state, and then boom, things start to speed up. Now, again, that can be disconcerting, especially if we are still in caterpillar goo mode. Right? Wait a minute, you want to wake me up and now I gotta become a butterfly? Okay. But it's now time to take that deep breath in that blue o'clock moment, that liminal space. And how can we shift so that we are not stuck in fearfulness or emotional depletedness, and instead can go, there is excitement to be had here. What do I get to do? What's going to happen when I get to, first unfold those wings and finally fly?
Well said. Anything else you'd like to add, Joy?
No, I love it. I love it. Very, very, very nice.
Okay. Okay, here's the cards if you want to lead us off, Joy.
Yeah, and so the world card and the Hanged Man are Saturn and Neptune. The conjunction aspect is governed by the sun, and so we can use the sun card to represent it. And I went ahead and threw in the Emperor there, although I could have also put the Two of Wands, because it is that first decan of Aries, and that might have been a better choice. But at any rate, this is the one I made in the moment. And the new beginning energy of that Aries point is so powerful. And in the tarot, we can see that the Hanged Man and the World are kind of inversions of each other. And we've already been talking about solar energy and lunar energy and above and below and all of that. And here we have yet again another inversion where the Hanged Man is like the mirror image of the world. But there's another metaphor that's used with these cards, and that is that the Hanged Man is the baby in the womb who has turned head downward and is ready to be born, and that the World card is that figure stepping through the birth canal and being born into the out of the quiet darkness of the womb into the bright noisy light of the world. And so again, even our tarot cards are talking about birth, are talking about these fresh beginnings, this transition from gestation into manifestation, and all this type of things. And there's layers and layers. If you let me go on, which I know you guys are probably sick of me, I could give you all kinds of Kabbalistic stuff on this. I might do a meetup on it next week. So check out my meetup if you're interested in lots of cool Kabbalistic symbolism and like totally geeking out on it with me. So lots of fresh start energy, new birth energy. And it's interesting. One of the things that I decided to, I was on this panel as well that was on the Aries point, and I thought, I know what the Aries point is. It's the first degree of the zodiac. It's the beginning of spring, vernal equinox. Got it. New beginnings. Good. And I thought, well, maybe I should research it just a bit, make sure there's not more to it. Thank goodness I did, because there was a whole slew of stuff about the Aries point that I didn't know. And so one of the things I learned is that the Aries point, you can, and this is obvious once you say it, but you can think of it as the sun's north node, because it's where the sun is crossing the ecliptic at the equinox and moving north towards the Tropic of Cancer. And the lunar nodes, of course, are very personal, and they represent something very personal for us, but that solar north node is something that is very universal and the same for everybody. And so that's a really interesting way of saying that. And imagining that this Aries point is this sun crossing into that north node out of the darkness into its rise, into its brightest, highest expression. And the Emperor, one of the interpretations of that is Robert Hand uses that that north node metaphor, or it's not a metaphor, it's what it is. He uses that to express that Aries point energy. And he also says that therefore the sun coming up towards its highest and brightest is this sense of achieving fame. And the other person that talked, that kind of repopularized the Aries pointer, popularized it for the individual, is Noel Till. And he talks about it as being the potential for projection into the public. So our Emperor card, who is regal and is clearly recognized and is claiming his throne and his scepter and his orb, and saying, I have power in the world. That is a really good expression of that Aries point, of that coming into fame, coming into power, coming into visibility. And so I think that these cards are just very much right in line with the energies that we're talking about.
Simon, would you like to share with the Toth cards?
So, couple things. The sun is exalted in Aries. Okay. That exaltation coincides nicely with that notion of fame, right? That we, and again, much of this is colored by so much of our astrology having been developed in the Northern Hemisphere. Do keep that in mind. Okay. So this is, the vernal equinox here is the autumnal equinox in the Southern Hemisphere. Okay. And so for the sun being exalted in Aries, that is, we're looking forward to the return of the light here in the Northern Hemisphere. Though I do think the sun can be exalted in Aries in the Southern Hemisphere, but now it's looking at it from that standpoint of we are remembering the sun. We are exalting the sun in that sense of looking at what has been and hoping for its return in another 6 months. Okay. That almost gives some of that sense of like epic poetry about the sun as hero. Okay. We look to what has been in the past and we hope for the return, right? Return of the king. So I also find it interesting, the Emperor card within the Thoth deck reflects the same leg posture that we see in the Hanged Man and in the Universe card. Okay. And some of that is, as I understand it, due to, Crowley's personal fondness for that particular symbolism. But I do find it interesting here because within the context of this conjunction, because this Saturn Neptune that is capable of both dissolving what might impede our new progress, right? Dissolving parts of reality that stand in our way. Okay. And then at the same time seeding a new beginning. One of the things that the Emperor is foundational. And the number 4 is foundational. Okay. It sets what we shall build upon for the foreseeable future. And remember that I said that, Saturn, Neptune at the 0 degree, the world point of Aries, is not something that we've seen for thousands upon thousands of years. And so this isn't just any old new beginning. This is a new beginning that becomes foundational for the whole next cycle, for as long as it takes for us to get to Saturn, Neptune at the Aries world point again. No pressure. But we've got this foundational energy with that Emperor, Okay. You know, one of the things that Saturn is about is establishing what is to last, and Neptune dissolving what isn't going to be worthy of lasting, what isn't going to be worthy of our Saturnian persistence and discipline and, um, you know, seriousness, right? Here we've got this impetus to set foundations that are going to last for a long time, that are going to influence the course of human history. And the emperor, it should be remembered, is the lawgiver. He takes the raw resources of the empress and puts order to them, establishes, among other things, who gets what. Okay. Which in our current, system of extreme income inequality and all of that is probably in need of some adjustment. And at the same time, as Joy said, we've got this kind of birth energy, right? That hanged man preparing to exit the womb, and the universe card with that figure preparing to step forth. From the endings of things, because it's the end of the major arcana, the end of the cycle, and Saturn, of course, governs endings. So, end, beginning, all the same, great change, to quote Agra from the Dark Crystal, because I'm a nerd. But this also implies there is a foundation that we are setting and work to be done. Remember that Saturnian processes, even though this is an Aries, which is quick, Saturnian processes are not a one and done, right? And so this is building foundations with the imagination of Neptune, and going back to our Pisces ingress, the imagination that we've been building and incubating through all the time that Neptune and Saturn have been in Pisces, and that we are still incubating really deeply now with this Pisces ingress and this Pisces season. So yes, there's this big new energy, this big, new beginning stuff, and it's happening in Pisces season, which is still incubator time. So yes, things may start moving quickly. Yes, we're going to need to do some of that foundational work. And at the same time, that foundation that we are setting is something that we're going to be building for some time to come. Marathon, not a sprint. Continue to pace ourselves. And I think it is appropriate to keep some knowledge of what we have learned within the darkness as we are stepping into the light.
Thank you for that, Simon. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Joy?
I'll throw in a couple little things. I'm really glad you brought up the emperor's leg position and everything. And that is, of course, a historical lineage and is in the Tarot de Marseille and older decks. And that's the one I've ranted many times before on. This is the one card that just got wrong. That emperor needs to have his legs crossed. And he needs to be facing to the viewer's left, because he needs to face the empress, and he's not here. He's looks uncomfortable and shifty, and like he's like, God, I hope you didn't see me, or he's trying to fart or something. I don't know what he's doing. His legs are all awkward and
Yeah.
so it's just like, wrong card. We need a different one. But nevertheless, speaking of farting, so the Emperor, it symbolically is, if you look over to the Thoth Emperor, you see from the crown down to an elbow, over to another elbow, back to the crown is a triangle, and the legs form a cross. The triangle over the cross is sulfur. Mm-hmm. And sulfur is the activating principle in alchemy. And the Hanged Man, which if you look at either in the Rider-Waite-Smith, again, we go elbow, elbow, head, but it's a downward pointing triangle. And it's actually the way the arms are stretched out in the Thoth deck, it's an upward pointing triangle. So it doesn't quite work there. I'm not sure what. I know he was seeing the symbol, but it's not the alchemical symbol. I'm not sure which symbol he was looking for. But the Rider-Waite-Smith, elbow, elbow on the Hanged Man down to the head with a cross over top of it, that is the alchemical symbol for the great work, which is the completion of the alchemical operation. And that's turning our lead Saturn into gold, our exalted sun in Aries. And so that energy is activated and completed. And again, there's almost, with all of this happening at once, it's almost like this instantaneous transformation, kind of like my metaphor, my quote unquote historical analysis of our 18th century energies. And so I do think that this is, I do think that there is these metaphors are expressing so clearly through any lens we turn at these. And it's very, very interesting. It's not often that that you get so many different, you can take so many different perspectives on a transit and keep coming back to the identical symbolism. So really interesting stuff here.
Thank you. Are you both ready to draw a card for the random draw?
I totally forgot about that. What decks do I have here?
Well, and I know we've gone kind of long, but if you want to still draw a card.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'll do I mean, I have 4 decks over here and 1 deck there, but I wanted a different one. My friend John is a Thoth reader, and so when he has multiple decks, he has all 3 sizes of the Thoth deck.
Nice. Well, I'm going to just mute you for a minute while you're shuffling, and then you can kind of signal me that you're ready. But I want to thank our audience for watching the Astrology Star Sisters. I want to thank Joy for doing the slides for me every month. Simon and I both appreciate that. I want to thank Simon and Joy for joining me today, because this is always a really fun show to do each month. I enjoy it greatly, and we always look forward to having our audience live and that come back and watch at a later time. We appreciate you. And Joy and Simon are shuffling the cards to come up with a card for the rest of the month, perhaps, or when I unmute them, they can kind of tell me maybe what they were thinking about. But I think it's about the Pisces ingress. Okay, I'm going to unmute you guys. There we go.
So I'm using of Tarot of a Moon Garden. And I've always I've never loved this deck, but I've always kind of liked it. And there's something very Piscean about it, which is why I grabbed it. It's a very soft, slow, gentle, meditative deck. And I can really, like, if I look quickly through the cards and try to quickly get a sense of the deck, I'm just like, boring, next. But when I spend time just staring at an image, just letting myself live in the landscapes of this deck, things really open up and bloom in a really nice way. So the card I have is the King of Staffs, the King of Wands. And of course, there is the like I said, the deck is there's forests and far castles. There's a lot of being out in nature. There are very few cards that are inside, and this guy's throne is a tree, so he is also out in nature. But he's got a lot of regalia on him. He's got a pretty heavy crown. King of Staffs is actually Leo, but I always find that the King of Wands or King of Staffs looks a lot like the Emperor. So that's kind of the first thing I thought when I saw this card. But the kings are at the height of their ability. They have a strong sense of accomplishment. And so I think some of the energy that we're seeing here is one of authority, one of rulership, one of confidence, one of expressiveness, as the Leo card, of really being able to, again, I think of Aries as claiming your identity or finding your identity, and Leo is as expressing your identity. And so to kind of take a big jump, and this of course is also where Jupiter is going to move into on the last day of June. Take a big jump from finding your identity to expressing your identity, and all within this context of the meditative process and my Moon Garden Tarot deck and the meditation of that, but also finding the outward expression of it. Kind of a theme that we're looking at. I'm really interested to see what Simon pulled and how it contrasts with this. So what do we got?
Show the box again, because I was flipping around with the. There we go.
Oh, yeah. So Tarot of a Moon Garden, and this is the borderless deck, and it's really nice. It's got purple, shiny purple edges, and it's tall and narrow, which is just really interesting. And but just gorgeous deck. The border version is more standard size than this is.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay, now we're going to go to Simon, and I'm going to make her bigger so we can see her card. Go ahead, Simon.
So that is the reversed position of defeat. 5 of Swords. So I like seeing that reversed, in the sense of giving us the potential to overcome self-defeating thinking. Okay. This card is it's Venus in Aquarius. Okay, where Venus just was squaring off against Uranus, where the sun is now squaring Uranus at the time of the ingress is I think 3 degrees past square, but still separating from that that transit. And so we can be really unsettled by change. Okay, and there are big changes afoot. Venus, among other things, yes, she's our love, our ability to connect. She's also our kindness. And it's very easy for kindness to go out the window when we're frazzled. Okay. Um, it's also easy for us to get, overly focused on social niceties that are, in fact, not actually kind. Uh, Within Aquarius, which traditionally is Saturn ruled, um, we can get caught up in Saturnian concepts like should, what one should do, what are societal expectations. And that in turn can, feel kind of claustrophobic and oppressive to our genuine connective principle. And so this card can very much relate to what are our internalized attitudes, what are the rules and rule following behaviors that we engage in that are antithetical to real kindness and connection. So when I see this card reversed, then that says two things. One, it suggests that we may not be fully aware of the ways in which we have allowed, the perfect to be the enemy of the good, the shoulds to take up rent-free space in our heads and dictate our behaviors in ways that actually aren't um, making the connections we want and upholding the values we want. Okay. In ways that are not truly kind. And at the same time, that reversal then says it's time to kick the squatters out of our heads. It's time to recognize that the spirit of the law, the spirit of the rules, may actually be more kind than the letter of these things. And that if we are engaged in kind of, slavish adherence to old structures that aren't actually kindly, we may be missing the boat on, when it comes to what actually upholds our values. And so now it's a time for us to reconsider that. And we'll get plenty of good reconsidering opportunity during Mercury's retrograde. That always gives us some time to reconsider things, especially in the sign of Venus's exaltation, which is Pisces, where she is now. So yeah, I feel like this card definitely is saying, let's not defeat ourselves within our heads, which is really easy to do when things are, chaotic and scary and unsettling and, all the big things that are going on around us and in the zeitgeist. But remember, Venus is a personal planet. She wants closeness, personal connection. And so this is a time for us to, maybe get out of that self-defeating headspace and into a more connective headspace.
Thank you. So anything else that you'd like to add, Joy? Well, thank you both, and we're gonna move on. And Joy, you can tell us about your slide here.
Oh, yeah, this is just a slide from my website. The QR code will take you straight to the website. And I am consulting astrologer and tarot reader and Reiki practitioner, and have a blog and a YouTube channel. And so there's lots and lots of stuff that you can find on my website.
Thank you. Simon?
So, I have a little community on Patreon, and I do write about astrological transits there, but I have been um, uh, returning to my roots, shall we say. I started that Patreon all the way back in like 2014, 2015, somewhere around there, to focus on artwork that is made based in astrological transits. And this year I've been really doing a lot of, highly symbolist work based in the transits. Um, about one drawing per week. Sometimes that shifts. But, and I share my artwork there and talk about the stuff that goes into it. And share some process work sometimes with my patrons there. And I also create, at some of the uh, from the $5 tier on up, I create custom astrological art for my patrons. Again, based in transits and or natal placements, and solar return art for uh, the everybody at the $5 and above level gets a custom solar return card each year, based on uh, whatever's going on in that chart. So yeah, it's me nerding out about astrology and art and the connection between the two, and regularly generating art based on that. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, I'd love to see you over there. Also, like Joy and Liz, I am a consulting astrologer and tarot reader. And if you're interested in scheduling a consultation, you can visit me at iconalchemy.com. You can also find my event schedule there for when I do live events here in the Pacific Northwest.
Thank you. And I do consultations. I have a newsletter, and you're watching my YouTube channel, so I appreciate you following, liking, and sending comments. I have a number of podcasts in the archives and 1 or 2 podcasts each week. I want to thank our sponsor, Astro Peregrine Software, an astrological software for Mac and Windows, and you can find out more information on astroperegrine.com. And I want to thank Joy and Simon for joining me today. It's been a pleasure as always, and I look forward to having you on next month. And we're all going to sign off and say goodbye for now. It's been a long one today, but we appreciate your support. So goodbye for now. See you next time.